Welcome, Robi. Thanks for being here today with us.
Thanks, James. I feel very honored to be on this panel. Certainly a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge that I've learned a lot about the EV infrastructure space just listening to my fellow panelists this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let me, I have a question for you here today. And again, to those out there who are watching, please hit that Q&A box, send us through some questions for Robi. You know, it seems right now through new electric vehicle OEM investments and stock prices, it's just going crazy. There's so much money that seems to be coming into this space right now. And I'm sure you've been watching this very closely. Do you see this as sustainable, and how can new OEMs take advantage of this? And really, what's the right pathway to go forward for an OEM, you know, such as Bollinger to move forward?
It's a lot to unpack in that question. Appreciate that. Starting with, is it sustainable? You know, I think as we've heard from all the other panelists, that it's going to require a lot of investment on the infrastructure side. I think equally, you know, you're going to need continued investment from existing OEMs in both heavy truck, medium duty truck, passenger car and light truck. You know, those continued investments you're seeing from the established companies who really are scrambling in a lot of ways to play catch up after ignoring the space for a lot of years. So that you're seeing a lot of investments, a lot of partnerships, and then you know, the most you know, I think the most telling story today is the blank check or SPAC activity you've seen, particularly around the EV space. It's a fascinating space. You know, public market investors historically, in my opinion, have not been the most patient capital. So I think you know, is it going to be sustainable? There's a lot of SPAC money that's been raised this year. I think something like triple or quadruple what was raised last year. So there's a lot of money to be put to work. As Arcadia mentioned, there's a lot of private equity money that's flowing into the space in and around electrification. So will it continue? I think it has to continue. The question is, where is it going to come from? And I think, you know, the public markets can be very fickle, and they thought, you know, that you'll see money flowing into the space. What we've heard in our exposure to that, and we've taken a look at that SPAC side. We've spoken to a number of SPACs that are actively looking for investment. So we've gotten some pretty good market insight. We've also talked to some long equity investors in the space, and fundamentally, what most of them are looking at are very, very long-term bets that they're placing. The question is, can they really stick into the companies and provide that low cost of capital the public market provides for the long term? Time will tell. You know, I'm not a public market expert, but I think it'll be interesting. For us at Bollinger, you know, one of the things that we've always focused on, and we've been very fortunate with, is our capital has come from the very beginning from our founder, Robert Bollinger, who remains our founder and CEO today. We are raising capital today because the needs of an OE in this space begin to outstrip any one individual, I guess, unless your last name is Musk. And in that case, you know, I think most of these public companies, as a side note, probably should be sending Mr. Musk flowers, because he's really paved the way, given what Tesla has done, not only as a public company, but just in general, open the door for a lot of these other companies to make a path. So what we've been focused on is really the Class 3 electrification market. So as Catherine mentioned, focusing that, you know, on the heavy duty side, classes 5 through 8. We've been exclusively focused in consumer and commercial Class 3 trucks. The trucks you see behind me on the wall, those are our passenger versions. Those are consumer versions. They are Class 3 vehicles. Our technology today that we've developed for our skateboard can scale up to a 4 or 5 truck on the commercial side. But really, that Class 3, that medium duty truck market is where we've been focused. And, you know, as I've heard some of the other panelists say, well, we view that market to be very interesting from a commercial perspective. It's, you know, a lot of the press today is around last mile delivery. You've seen major market orders from folks like Amazon with Rivian and Arrival in the UK and their interest with UPS. So you've seen a lot around the last mile delivery space. We have a concept in the last mile delivery space we've introduced recently. That said, our vehicle and our core technology and our skateboard in Class 3 is designed for some purpose-built end use activities that would be more unique in different fleets. So think off-highway, off-road, very complex environments where you would need the capabilities that are inherent in our trucks. And so to that end, we don't get the same amount of press in those fleet markets, but they're still very important markets that we see a lot of investment being made into. And to that end, we're talking to a number of strategic partners. And I think that's the key point I want to make here, is that what we're seeing is a lot more partnering going on. So while you certainly have institutional venture capital and private equity money still investing in the space, today what we've seen in our experience has been those venture capital investors, if they didn't get involved early in the company's life cycle, and in our case we're a little more mature, we've had a significant amount of financing come for our founder. At this point, venture capital, they want to see validation from commercial partners. So you're seeing these tie-ups with the most recent one. You have Nikola and GM announcing a partnership. This last year, Ford and Rivian announcing partnerships. So you're seeing a lot more of this partnering in these end markets, and really I see that as a bet by OEs to really place some strategic capital bets and inherent institutional knowledge with these companies to see which way to see which way the wind really blows. I think it's still undetermined. I mean, what we've heard from the suppliers, and our suppliers are the same as these other OEs in the tier 1 automotive supply base. What we've heard from some major key suppliers in the electrification space is that their view of the market is that the consumer adoption of EVs will happen at a much slower rate than the commercial adoption. Seems to make sense based on what Catherine has mentioned and some of the trends, both governmentally and environmentally, that we're trying to meet in terms of some of the goals. And so I think that is going to encourage additional collaboration, because the amount of capital, because the amount of capacity in manufacturing that already exists today. I think what you'll increasingly see is more tie-ups between commercial strategic partnerships in the EV space, particularly where we play, versus I shouldn't say versus, but really in concert with private institutional capital.
Thanks, Robi. That's really good. Now, I do have some questions from the audience. Now, actually, before we get to them, I think one of the things that we have been noticing here is that there seems to be real differences between, say a public, SPAC type towards a more private one, like the pathway that Rivian's gone, and also towards towards say other institutional investors that might come in. Do you think perhaps that there is room for a split of all three, or do you think perhaps adding OEMs into that, established OEMs into that as well? Is there room for all three of them, or do you think it's better to have a focus on one point of investment than the other?
It's a good question. I think that there is room for all three. I'll just kind of caveat that with the fact that the public markets are valuing these companies today, particularly in the SPACs, and I've seen the investor presentations on all these companies. They're valuing these companies based on 2024, 2025 revenue numbers. And so if you're still 5 years out, 4 years out, that you're valuing these against, I mean, that's a lot, and you can see it in public marketplaces. I mean, Tesla, which has clearly been the pioneering market leader in the EV space, they're selling hundreds of thousands of vehicles globally, with massive manufacturing capability, with massive established entrenched technology advantages over even some of the traditional OEs in the automotive space. And so to say it's going to stay, I think that the market may close to new entrants on the public side. The people who are there are going to be public. They'll face increasing pressures. But I think it does take, just like it takes on the infrastructure side, it takes a myriad of investment dollars coming in from multiple places, whether it's private, whether it's institutional capital, commercial, strategic partners. I think it really takes a village to raise up this industry. And I think you're going to continue to see that those investments are going to come from multiple locations. There's not going to be one clear answer that says, this is the only path to take. You have to look at multiple pathways.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Robi. I think going forward, I think many will be looking at those multiple pathways that you mentioned. Now, before we go on, if there are any quick questions from the audience, use that Q&A box for send Robi a question. But in the meantime, we do have a product question for Bollinger. Will the Bollinger be bidirectionally enabled for things like V2G?
We are enabling our vehicles both on the commercial as well as on the consumer side as bidirectional for V2G capability set. We have a very large pack that comes in our base vehicles. It's a 142 kilowatt hour battery pack. And so we bring a lot of power to the equation. We can actually, the way our battery packs are designed, we buy from a module level and build our own proprietary packs, proprietary pack design, cooling, et cetera, and BMS. And the way we are done is through 35 kilowatt hour strings that can scale up to about a 210 kilowatt hour pack. So we've got a lot of capability around that. And yes, they are going to be all bidirectional. So I think that'll provide some really interesting applications for V2G.
Very cool. Thanks, Robi. I really appreciate your time today. And before we finish up our time today, I'd just like every panelist here just to give perhaps their one sentence thought on what the direction is for electric vehicles now and future investment, and a key message that you would like to leave our audience as we take away. Robi, what is your thoughts as a closing statement for us?
Sure, I'll end on a lighter note. I'll echo what Michael was saying earlier, that we're in the early innings, but in the near term here, I'm just all spacked out at the moment.
I like that, all spacked out. That's funny. That's good.